Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and it's not Spawn year. It's day 45 of my comic review video day calendar. And today, as promised, I'm doing a follow up to Cyberspace 3000 from Marvel. And this isn't a related book in any way as far as story or art or writer or anything. If you know early 90s comics, maybe you could call where I was going for DC with this. This is Robin 3000, and this is from 1992, so right around the same time as Cyberspace 3000, just a year before. And kind of odd that both of these went to the 31st century and had 3000 in their title. Had I remembered that this was the first of only a 2-issue miniseries, I may not have picked this. This is another kind of stupid exercise. Like the other day when I picked the first issue of just a 3-issue miniseries. Now I'm going to review half of something. But as I've said before, I'm rigidly only picking single issues this year of random comics from my personal collection. So, yeah, I could have read both and reviewed them as a separate vault. Maybe I ought to do that. I don't think I've ever talked about this before. I couldn't remember. And this was also, like, it's all coming back to me now. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's 2 issues, and I owned them. And for some reason, Elseworlds put a few things like this out in the 90s where it easily could have been just one $10 book instead of 2 $5 books, and this is oversized, or even 3 or 4 issue minis, but they chose to do it this way for whatever reason. And maybe there's a trade version of this that has them both that kind of just looks like a graphic novel. I'm not sure. I've never seen that, but I had forgotten that I had both of these and that this wasn't just one issue. So this is probably the longest thing that I've read so far for this year, because most of the things I've picked are just 22 page, issues, or maybe a little oversized sometimes. This is probably closer to, I don't know, 35 maybe. 30 or 35, and I think it's a little padded and doesn't really need to be as long as it is, and it's really odd that when you get to the end, it just kind of stops. Like, it doesn't feel like it was formatted to be 2 issues like it is. You get to the end, and we're just right in the middle of an action scene, and you're not really that worried about your protagonist surviving. There's not a panel where, oh no, he's going to die, how's he going to get out of it, or a big character reveal, or anything like that. It's just, and you turn the page and it's done. And oh, I guess I better go read the other issue now. So anyway, this is written by Byron Priest with art by P. Craig Russell. I think of this as a thing I'm nostalgic for, but it's really just the cover. This was, believe it or not, one of the first comics that I ever got when I was a kid. I bought this at a flea market just based on the cover. It looked really provocative and strange, and I didn't understand why it was Robin and not a Batman book. Like, Batman's there on the cover, but just to sell it, he's actually going to die in the first few pages. And the only thing that really stuck with me about this, I think I went back and read this again a few years ago, but like, this story never sticks with me. I can never remember what happens in it apart from Batman getting killed in the first few pages and it being a kind of generic alien invasion, dystopian future kind of story. This really doesn't warrant being a Batman thing. It kind of feels like somebody had an idea that they kind of shoved Batman into. It doesn't really explore the mythology or the psychology very much of Batman, and I realize that it's, you know, set over 1,000 years after the original Batman, but you still want it to be some kind of a Batman thing. Like, the idea that somebody would look back at simpler times with the 20th century and decide to do the same thing Bruce Wayne did in a future where you couldn't be an urban legend, and where the street level crime would of course be very different, and where you're dealing with different kinds of problems. Now it's alien invasions and people being mutated and genetic engineering, and okay, all of those things Batman at some point or another was also dealing with. But all things being equal, throw away the rest of the DC universe and Superman stuff, Cadmus Labs level kinds of things. And I mean, I guess Batman deals with plenty of genetic engineering, honestly, in some of his own stories as well. But forgetting some of the rest of the DC universe, Batman is usually dealing with, of course, street level crime and gangsters and mob bosses and organized crime, that kind of thing. So what if your organized crime was like a conspiracy by space aliens, and you looked back in history and you thought the best way to unravel all of that and figure out what's happening and bring down the system is to become Batman. That's kind of an interesting idea. That's not exactly what we have here, and making it Robin instead muddles it even further. Like, why is it Robin? It seems like we're kind of just going to whatever is sort of popular right now. There's a letters page. There's a foreword at the beginning of this, which is one of the things that I think makes it worth looking at, by Chuck Dixon. That's kind of interesting, where he's talking about how surprised he is, and maybe DC editorial is, in the popularity of Robin right then as a separate entity from Batman. So by the mid-90s, maybe a little bit earlier, you'll have a regular ongoing for Robin, for the Tim Drake version. But before that, you have several miniseries. So around 90-91, you had just a miniseries called Robin, and then you had Robin 2 and then Robin 3. I always thought that they were separate Robins. Like, the first one must be about Dick Grayson, the second one must be about Jason Todd when I was a kid. But it isn't that. I don't think. I'm pretty sure it's all Tim Drake, and they're just labeled 2 and 3 because they're sequels to each other. It's been a long time since I've looked at those, so I totally could be wrong about that. And I remember one of those is called Joker's Wild, unless that was even a fourth separate thing. But I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure that was one of those. Maybe it's Robin 2 that's Joker Wild. I forget now. I have sold that miniseries 100 times back when I was on eBay as a reseller, and I own it, I think. That had, like, cool hologram covers when that was really popular. But anyway, so it's got the same logo that those, besides the 3000, of course, that those miniseries were using, and it seems like it's kind of cashing in on the sudden popularity of that character, and this just doesn't have enough to do with Robin. And beyond that, it's kind of weird that this kid, well, first of all, he hardly wears a costume through the entire thing, and there's a reason for that, but it really feels like these guys had this dystopian, futuristic story they wanted to tell, and they kind of just shoved Batman and Robin into it. And it's also odd because this Robin is not a kid that's that Batman finds, or that goes and finds him. He is a Wayne in and of himself. So arguably, there's no reason for him, especially after Batman dies, which happens in the first few pages, and like I said, is the only thing the only thing that I remembered about this book. So like when I was a kid, I really loved this cover. This, by the way, introduced me to Elseworlds in the first place, and I just thought it was a really novel concept to go to another universe and do a totally different version of Batman set in the future like this. But I always struggled to remember anything that happened past the first few pages. I've read this twice for this review, and I'm still having that problem. It is, partly it's a little generic, and partly I just lose interest because it says Robin 3000 on the front. It's got Batman getting shot up. I want it to feel more like a Batman book, and it just doesn't to me. So your basic premise here is you've got these aliens that have swooped in and are pretending to be benign and benevolent and want to be humanity's saviors, because we have kind of screwed ourselves with a serum that's mutating a lot of people and just messing up lives. And Bruce Wayne 19 is being blamed for it, and he's made a scapegoat or his family, I should say, because he's dead at this point. So he was a scientist, a kind of a jack of all trades, who's good at everything. He has absolutely the I'm Batman problem, where he was able to do pretty much anything he put his mind to whatsoever. And he came up with this process that combines, I don't really understand it, but it combines, it's a little convoluted, cloning with some kind of other genetic engineering, which creates a version of human beings that is, I guess, more adaptable or something, and it's easier for them to go colonize other planets. And I wouldn't think that enough time would have even passed after that to get, because, like, it's within his generation to have, like, very many of these new human beings that would change very much. But that's what he does. And then eventually, with all of the experiments being done with the serum that he creates, you start having a lot of problems apparently in the genome, and it's giving people horrible diseases, and it's, again, creating mutates. And he's blamed for that by these aliens that come in, and we hear their name 150 times in this book, and I can never remember what it is. Sculp. The Sculp race. Everybody file that away. I cannot remember it. I can't keep it in my head. The Sculps. Okay, and so the Sculps are making the Wayne family into scapegoats for some reason. And what I'm confused about with that is that I can't, and it seems like maybe there's some kind of a reveal in the second book. I'm not sure, because I didn't read it for this, so maybe it will all make sense at the end of the day, but it kind of takes too long after the exposition about what happened with him in the past, where I'm a little bit, I'm not trusting the book in the first place, and I'm a little bit confused, so I'm just not wrapped up in it, because it already feels like it might be built on a faulty premise. I wish I had more of a sense of, don't worry, this is weird right now, but it's all going to, it's all going to unravel and make sense eventually. Just trust us. But I don't get that feeling with it. So what I'm confused about is why it isn't Bruce Wayne 19's fault. I guess every male born after Bruce Wayne in his family is he calls himself Bruce Wayne. I don't know. There's no discussion at all, by the way, about who the original Bruce Wayne married or had a kid with. I'm going to assume Catwoman, because there is a woman mysteriously named Selina in this that shows up in a single panel, and I'll talk about that in a second because I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But the point I'm trying to make is, it seems like Bruce Wayne 19 is kind of at fault. Like, he's doing all this genetic experimentation, and then eventually it seems to be the standard human beings playing God. We've got too much hubris problem. We monkeyed with our own genome too much, and now we're paying the price for it. But the book is saying Bruce Wayne didn't do anything wrong, and these aliens just wanted to find somebody to blame. And I don't know why the aliens need to do that, why they think it's important anyway, because they just come in and it's easy for them, like they take over the world, they make up their own rules, they are totalitarian dictators, they're very oppressive. Why do they need any kind of a scapegoat? Why can't they just do what they're doing regardless of finding someone to blame for it? I don't understand that whole thing. And then what happens, apparently, is Bruce Wayne, like the inciting incident for this, the occasion for story is the Bruce Wayne 20, who is not the scientist, but his son, he decided at some point to become Batman and, like, run a crusade against the Sculp. And so the whole thing is a kind of Star Wars rebellion sort of story. Again, it doesn't feel like a Batman thing at all. I do think that you could do this story and it still feel like a Batman thing, maybe, but it just doesn't, because it just starts with you have a leader of a resistance against aliens that have taken over who puts on a bat suit. And I mean, I guess Batman, again, he does go up against organized crime and stuff, and, like, I could see him leading a revolution in a different kind of universe, so, like, maybe, but I just think with the Elseworlds, kind of emblem on this, it's going, we can tell any sort of story that we want to whatsoever, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with the characters or the ideas of the thing we're playing around with, and if it has that iconography, isn't it cool and novel and crazy that we called it Batman or that we called it Robin? I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to just keep making the same point over and over again, but that's one of the things that's frustrating about this, because eventually Robin just takes his costume off because he is being incognito. He's going sort of undercover, pretending like he's not a Wayne, because the Wayne family has been completely ostracized by the Sculpts. And if you are a Wayne, you're a criminal by, and I think they say like a genetic criminal, or I forget the way they put it, but you are guilty by, it's like sins of the father. You're guilty by association for being in the family of the Waynes because they ruined the world. And so Batman, this Batman, Bruce Wayne 20, it's so absurd. Bruce Wayne 20 grew up in a prison because he was Bruce Wayne 19's son, and so he was never really allowed to be free until he got like a semblance of his freedom by denouncing his father, the other Bruce Wayne. And we're told that he denounces his father in name only, but secretly he goes and he becomes Batman. Well, anyway, the Sculpts figure out that Bruce Wayne 19 is Batman, and they go after him, and Batman and Robin, who is his nephew, and he is Tom Wayne, Thomas Tom Wayne. So you have Bruce Wayne and Tom Wayne, who obviously is named after the original Bruce Wayne's father. And then they cannot outrun the Sculpts. They can't do anything against them. And so finally Batman is killed, like the cover kind of alludes to. And I like, by the way, the cover is kind of an homage, a little bit of a throwback to some of the early Batman and Robin covers, but in a real dystopian, kind of violent way. And they're after, they would be after Tom Wayne if they knew about him, but they don't realize that he was Robin. So I guess they're after him, but they're not after Robin. So all Tom Wayne has to do is take his mask off like he does at the beginning, and then they don't know that he's associated with Batman. But that's weird because they know that Bruce Wayne was Batman, so you'd think that they would maybe be able to, make that correlation, that distinction. Anyway, so so he's trying to, Batman's been made a martyr, and Tom Wayne is trying to help the underground resistance, and he ultimately ends up, and also they make they have a robot that looks just like, or that they're able to make look just like Tom Wayne, and he's wearing the Robin costume. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. This part of it works okay, because they find the idea is the Sculpts. It's all coming back to me now. The Sculpts find. I'm not finding this story especially compelling. The Sculpts find the robot at the beginning that looks like Robin, and so the idea is they'll believe that that's Robin, and so Tom Wayne can kind of get away scot-free because they won't think that he was ever Robin. And so now he's just guilty in the same way Waynes were always guilty, and so he gets put in prison, but kind of a lush prison cell where he's comfortable, and then he breaks out of that with the help of an ally named Aki, I think, and then ultimately he gets into a battle with some robots on another planet, and he has to have his hand amputated. So now he ends up in a Luke Skywalker kind of situation, and and it seems like this is contrived just so that he can get like a signature weapon. Again, this has nothing to do with Robin at all. Now he's got a robot hand, so he is a part cyborg, and it has weapons on it that help him in his adventures after this. And then while he's put under for the surgery for the robot hand, he's dreaming all of the history up to this point so that we can get all the exposition we need, even though I don't understand all of it, about what this world is now. And when we find out that Bruce Wayne 20 grew up in a prison, kind of like Bane, somehow a woman named Selina sneaks into his cell and tells him the legend of Batman. And then he decides to be Batman. So I'm assuming that all the descendants of Catwoman also decided to name themselves Selina, or maybe it's just a coincidence that her name is Selina and she looks just like Selina Kyle. Maybe it's supposed to be like in the Batman universe, history is always repeating itself, and you always have to have a Batman and a Robin and a Catwoman. I don't know. But to my earlier point, why doesn't, and maybe this happens in the second issue, I can't remember, but why is he Robin? Like, he was Robin in the first place because he's palling around with Batman, but now he should essentially just be Batman, right? Like, he's Thomas Wayne, he's another Wayne, he would be like the next in line for the mantle if the mantle were to keep being passed down. So in no way whatsoever is this really a Robin book. And it's odd. Like, this would almost be a better story if it was just Batman 3000 and we had, Bruce Wayne 20 running around trying to stay alive. It's all very strange choices here. And anyway, he's just fighting against the Sculpts and trying to find a way to get the upper hand against them. Meanwhile, the Sculpts are using the android that looks like him, that looks like Tom Wayne, in order to like rally people and make them believe that the Waynes are now allies with the Sculpts for some reason. And then at the end, there's a big battle with the underground resistance, and then it just kind of stops. I guess also the leader of the Sculpts, the big bad guy who we're not introduced to until the last few pages of this, so they seem like kind of a faceless enemy through most of this, which is part of one of the many reasons it's not very compelling. And then you get to the end of this, and I'd kind of forgotten about this for a second, and Thomas Wayne and his allies, Aki, and there's also a girl that they meet up with, they all get picked up, kidnapped by the Sculpt leader, and then his plan, instead of killing them, is to use a time machine to send them like 50,000 years in the past on this alien planet that they're at. They're not on Earth at this point. And that's his whole plan. And then when you get to the last few pages, we finally have the Robin costume again, but it's being worn by the android. So I guess maybe he's programmed to do I almost said original, but Bruce Wayne 20's bidding, and now he's going to also be an ally on our side. So, like, the robot is more Robin right now than our actual protagonist, I guess. And then, again, it ends with their... Well, I said a battle. Are we in the middle of a firefight? Yeah, we're in the middle of a firefight with a tank. This is the last page. It just kind of stops at that point. That's what happens in this. I don't have a ton else to add. Like, this has mostly just been synopsis and me going, some of this is confusing and I don't understand it, and it's very early 90s comic sci-fi where it doesn't seem... One of two things is going on. It either is coasting on being like feeling real serious and violent, and like it matters because it's yet another story about an oppressive dictatorship, in the future, quelching our hopes and dreams, and an idealistic superhero with ideals from a previous time can save us, and it's not really concerned about making a lot of sense, or there's just a huge breakdown in communication where this makes perfect sense to the writer, but a lot of it feels random and arbitrary and real contrived. And like I said, we've just got a bad guy that's kind of faceless through the majority of this, that I'm not finding particularly menacing. And I was disappointed going back to this because I remembered really digging this as a kid. But now I'm thinking, I definitely read all of it, though. I was going to say, I either never read all of it, or I just looked at the first few pages and thought it was really cool, and then put it in my collection, because even at the beginning of my comic collecting, I did read, but I was kind of more interested in getting the cool stuff and collecting it than I was even in the stories themselves at that point. So But no. Now that I'm thinking about it, I definitely did read it, but it never stuck with me. So I wonder if I even really liked it that much at the time, or if I went, well, at least the cover is cool. Anyway, so I don't know. That's Robin 3000. This was very disappointing. Maybe it gets better on with that second book, the second part. But that's sad. Anyway, so tomorrow I'm gonna review something else, as I always do. I'm gonna do all year long, grabbing more random issues out of my collection, and I don't know where I'm gonna go yet. It won't be a 3000, but it will almost certainly be another DC or a Marvel thing. I may go to some other company. I don't know yet. I'm mostly just doing mainstream superhero stuff this year. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. As entertaining as I could possibly make this. And in the meantime, I was Captain Logan, and happy reading.